My parents stole my credit card and blew $50,000 on my sister's lavish getaway. When my mom rang, chuckling, she sneered, "We maxed out your card, came in real handy. You thought you could hide money from us? Consider this your little punishment." Me? They kept crying. I gave everything, my time, my money, my sanity, just to keep this family afloat, only to be stabbed in the back by the very people I sacrificed for. Samantha stole from me. My parents defended her, and I was made to feel selfish for demanding basic respect. The betrayal burned so deep it hollowed me out. Watching them smile after everything? It made me sick. They didn't just use me, they chose to break me, and I'll never forget it. My name is Emery, and I'm 28 years old on paper. I've got it all together. I lead a fast-paced creative marketing team at a tech company in San Francisco. Sip overpriced cold brew and own more blazers than hoodies. People think I'm thriving, and in some ways I am. But behind the curated highlight reel is a life far more complicated. About a year ago, my father's small business collapsed almost overnight, taking our family's sense of stability with it. Suddenly, I wasn't just Emery the marketing strategist. I became the backbone of my entire family. I moved back into my childhood home, taking on bills, groceries, car payments, and everything in between. My parents were stunned and spiraling. My younger sister Samantha, still glued to her phone and perfectly manicured, like the world hadn't changed. No one asked if I could afford it or if I was okay. They just looked to me calm, competent Emery to fix it. At first, I didn't complain. That's what family does, right? But slowly, I started to notice something I couldn't ignore. I was the only one sacrificing. And that's where my story begins. Not with my success, but with the moment I started questioning the weight I was carrying. It started on a Thursday evening. The kind of quiet, gray-skied evening where everything feels just a little off. I was seated at the kitchen table, sorting through spreadsheets for work with one hand and sipping lukewarm tea with the other. My mother stood at the stove, stirring a thin soup that smelled more of water than seasoning, and casually announced, "Emery says she wants steak for dinner tomorrow." I looked up, confused. "Steak? We can't afford that right now. I just paid off the utilities and Samantha's car insurance." I tried to keep my tone level, calm. But inside, I was tired, burned out. That's when Samantha sprawled across the couch scrolling on her phone. Spoke up with the gall of royalty being inconvenienced. "Big sis, maybe if you gave more for groceries, we wouldn't have to settle for this." My jaw literally dropped. I stared at her stunned. "I give $8 a month," I said slowly, trying to keep the tremble out of my voice. "That should be more than enough," Samantha scoffed, flicking her perfect nails against the phone screen. "Prices are higher now. $8 isn't what it used to be. It's barely enough for a family of 5. That was the moment something broke in me. Not because of the money, but the entitlement, the absolute lack of gratitude. "Fine," I snapped. "I'll give 11. But if that's not enough, maybe you should try contributing yourself." My mother didn't flinch. "It's hard to find work right now," she said, immediately siding with Samantha. And my father? Silent, eyes on the TV. It wasn't just disappointment I felt. It was betrayal. I had been holding us together for months, sacrificing everything. My time, my energy, my peace, only to be told it wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough. And worse, they were protecting the one person doing nothing. It was then I realized, I wasn't part of a family. I was a paycheck wrapped in skin. And for the first time, I started to wonder what would happen if I walked away. I tried to shake it off. The comment, the entitlement, the way my parents didn't even blink before defending Samantha. It all sat heavy in my chest, but I told myself maybe it was just stress. Maybe they were overwhelmed. So I did what I always do. I gave more quietly without complaint. I added another $3 to the monthly household account thinking maybe, just maybe, things would ease up. But days passed, and nothing changed. The fridge still looked empty halfway through the week. The lights were left on all night, wasting power. Samantha continued lounging on the couch, scrolling through influencer videos and acting like life owed her 5-star dinners and luxury skincare. One afternoon, I came home early and found her casually opening an online shopping box. 2 pairs of designer shoes sat nestled in tissue paper, shining like a slap to the face. "Where did you get those?" I asked, my voice too calm for the fire inside. "Oh, they were on sale," she said sweetly. "And since you gave more this month, I figured there was wiggle room." That's when I started checking the statements. My login, my bank account, my salary, being bled dry one order at a time, makeup, clothes, online subscriptions, even takeout from restaurants I'd never seen on our table. Samantha wasn't just spending the grocery money. She was living her best life on my back. I confronted my parents again, my voice shaking. "She's using the money for herself." She hasn't bought groceries in 2 weeks. She helps around the house, my mom said with a shrug, not even looking up from her show. She carried a plate to the sink. I replied, staring at her. That's not help. That's existing. Dad grunted something about being fair and keeping the peace, but peace was the last thing I felt. I started to pull back. I stopped making their breakfasts. I no longer prepped Dad's lunch. I let the bills pile up without my hand smoothing them into order. And I waited. Samantha didn't notice. Neither did my parents until their show stopped streaming and the power bill showed red. That's when I made my decision. I would keep a roof over their heads for now, but they would feel the weight I carried every day. I would no longer be invisible. Because sometimes, silence isn't peace. It's the calm before a storm you never saw coming. I didn't say much at first. Not when the pantry emptied again. Not when Samantha smugly flaunted her new designer handbag, a gift from a friend. She claimed, as if we both didn't know where the money came from. Not even when my mom handed her another wad of cash, whispering like it was some sacred exchange. I just watched. And I waited. Because here's the thing about growing up in a house where you're the backbone and the burden, eventually, you learn to carry the weight with grace. I woke up every morning, packed my own breakfast now, brewed my own coffee, and left for work without saying a word. While they slept in and lived soft, I took on extra shifts. I built a cushion in my account. Slowly and quietly, I stopped asking for fairness. I stopped waiting for thanks. They weren't going to give it to me, and I no longer needed it. Instead, I started journaling. Every cent I spent. Every hour I worked. Every time I swallowed my pride to keep the peace. I tracked it like evidence. Not just for them, but for myself. Proof that I was strong. That I wasn't imagining the imbalance. And when I needed clarity, I ran through Central Park, down the East River, pushing past tourists and dog walkers with the kind of grit born from exhaustion. It was there, in the rhythm of my own breath, that I found resilience. Not in their approval, not in their praise, but in myself. I stopped waiting for Samantha to change. I stopped hoping my parents would see. Instead, I focused on building my escape. I applied for a promotion at work, enrolled in night classes, even started networking with old college friends. Every day, I built a little more. Not just money, but courage, a plan, a way out. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. It doesn't throw plates or scream in the living room. Sometimes, it's a woman waking up before the sun, quietly stacking bricks one by one until she builds herself a door. And one day soon, I plan to walk through it with or without their blessing. It started with a laugh. Not mine, of course, but Samantha's. That airy, self-satisfied chuckle that floated through the hallway like perfume. I had just gotten home. Shoulders aching from a 12-hour day. When I heard her voice drifting from the living room, he bought me the platinum set. Mom, it's like 10 times better than what Emery wears. I paused at the doorway, still holding the grocery bags I'd paid for. My ears prickled at the words. My heart sinking a little lower than it already had. I mean, Emery always wears those budget-friendly pieces. Samantha went on, scrolling through her phone. She calls it minimalist. But let's be honest, it's just broke chic. I could hear my mother giggling in response. She's always been too practical. You were always the charming one. And just like that, it clicked. I wasn't their daughter. I was their workhorse. I dropped the groceries on the counter harder than I meant to. The bang silenced the room. For a moment, no one said anything. Then I stepped in slowly, calmly, my voice quieter than a whisper but sharper than glass. So, what's the occasion? I asked. New jewelry? Matching delusions? Samantha blinked at me like I was an unwanted extra in her carefully curated life. It's just a gift. She shrugged. From someone who appreciates me. My mom added with a shrug. She deserves it. She works hard around the house. I almost laughed. Right. Carrying her dishes from the couch to the sink must be exhausting. I wasn't looking for a fight. But sometimes, the truth demands to be said out loud. What followed was the usual denials, deflections, gaslighting attempts. They painted me as jealous, sensitive, dramatic, but I didn't flinch. I stood there absorbing every petty word like armor being welded to my skin, because I knew the truth. I paid the mortgage. I kept the lights on. I filled the fridge they raided daily, and all they gave me in return was side comments and passive-aggressive praise for the daughter who hadn't held a job in 3 years. That night, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I went to my room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I pulled up a spreadsheet and started a new tab. At the top, I wrote one word in bold, exit, and then I began to plan. It was 2 p.m. on a Wednesday when I received the call that changed everything. Miss Emery, this is Lisa from Crescent Financial. We're calling about several flagged charges on your credit card, totaling over $130 in the past 5 days. Are you aware of these transactions? I nearly dropped my coffee. What? I asked, my voice tight. My hands trembled as I pulled open the bank app, my eyes darting through a parade of charges. Luxury boutiques in Maui, high-end restaurants, spa treatments, and even a private catamaran rental. My pulse quickened, but in my gut, I already knew. There was only one person in this family capable of such self-indulgence, and shameless enough to do it on my dime: Samantha. I called her immediately. Explain, I said coldly when she answered. Oh, come on, she chirped, unbothered. It's not a big deal. You weren't even using that card. $130 isn't a little accident. Samantha. She actually laughed. We're family. You always say we have to share. I just took the initiative. It was that final word, initiative, that set the fire blazing in me. For years, I'd been the dependable one, the provider, the one who carried this family like a silent mule while they sang praises for Samantha's charm. They dismissed my sacrifices as obligations, while her mediocrity was celebrated like royalty. But not this time. This time, I had proof, solid, undeniable proof of theft, irresponsibility, and betrayal, and I used it. I canceled the card, reported the charges, and had the account flagged for investigation. I even sent the voicemail Samantha left, mocking me and calling me cheap, straight to our parents in a group chat titled Reality Check. The fallout was swift. My parents were horrified, not just by what she did, but by what she said. For the first time, they couldn't defend her. The evidence was right there, and it was dripping with her entitlement. When they tried to call me, I let it go to voicemail. When Samantha sent me a whoops, my bad text with a winking emoji, I forwarded it to the credit card company as further evidence of her lack of remorse. Later that evening, I stood on my balcony, sipping a glass of wine while the sun dipped behind the skyline. My phone buzzed with frantic messages and excuses. I turned it face down and smiled. Finally, the scales had tipped. I wasn't just the one carrying the burden anymore. Now, I held the power, and it tasted like justice. That evening, when I walked through the front door, I expected silence or tension, maybe even guilt, but no. My parents were lounging on the sofa like nothing had happened. The TV was on, and the smell of microwaved popcorn hung in the air. My mother looked up and smiled casually. "Welcome back, Emery," she said, as if the last week hadn't imploded under the weight of betrayal. I didn't reply. I headed to the kitchen, needing space, needing clarity, but my father followed, leaning against the counter like he was waiting to have a heart-to-heart. "Did you really have to freeze the card?" he asked softly, disappointment lining his voice. "Samantha is stranded now. She's scared. She doesn't have any money." I turned slowly, unable to believe what I was hearing. She used my card without permission. She spent over $130 on luxury spas, fine dining, and designer shoes. And I'm the one who's gone too far. She didn't mean harm. My mother chimed in from the living room. She just wanted a break. She planned to bring souvenirs. Souvenirs? I stared at them, stunned. My chest tightened. Not with rage anymore, but something colder, sadder. The realization that they truly didn't see it. Not the theft. Not the manipulation. Not the years I've been carrying the weight of this family while Samantha floated on their blind affection. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "You want to talk about harm? Listen to this." I played the voicemail. Samantha's voice crackled through the room. "Seriously, Emery? You canceled the card? I can't believe you're being so cheap. What are you even saving for? You're not married. You don't have kids. What else are you going to do with your money?" Silence. Finally, my father's expression changed. My mother looked away. "Still think I overreacted?" I asked quietly. No one responded. And for the first time in years, they were forced to sit with the truth, not mine. The truth, the one they'd ignored for far too long. That night, after everything had boiled over and the silence in the house grew louder than any argument, I stood at the kitchen window staring out into the dark. Something inside me had shifted, a quiet but undeniable resolve. I had been the backbone of this family for too long, carrying the financial load, swallowing my feelings, biting my tongue while Samantha spent and my parents enabled. But no more. The next morning, while the house still slept, I opened my laptop and began making plans. I pulled up an old message from an acquaintance, Ava, a real estate agent I'd met years ago during a work conference. She had once mentioned that the lot our house sat on had appreciated significantly. With shaking hands but a steady heart, I messaged her. "Is that offer still on the table?" Within hours, Ava confirmed, "Yes, and higher than before." Over the following week, I moved in silence. I arranged paperwork, spoke to lawyers, transferred the deed, and hired movers. Every detail handled like I was orchestrating a masterpiece. When my parents and Samantha returned from their impromptu shopping trip, bags in hand and grins plastered on their faces, they were greeted not by me, but by a bright red "for sale" sign staked in our front yard. The The look on their faces? Priceless. I've already sold the house. I said calmly over dinner that night. Our things are being packed as we speak. I've arranged a place for you to stay. With Grandma. In Ohio. Rent-free. She's thrilled to have help at her restaurant again. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. You did what? I took control. I replied simply. This house is in my name. Has been for years. Ever since Dad signed it over when I paid off the taxes. Samantha's face drained of color. You're kicking us out? No. I said, rising from my chair, looking each of them in the eye. I'm finally choosing myself. You all chose Samantha over and over. Now I choose me. That night, as I watched them scramble to understand what had just happened, I felt lighter, empowered, free. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval, their understanding, or their gratitude. I had taken my life back, and it felt incredible. The morning after I sold the house. The air felt different, crisp, clean, as if even the wind knew something had changed. I sipped my coffee on the small balcony of my new apartment, letting the warmth wash over me. It was the first time in years I'd woken up without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing on my chest. There were no slammed doors, no backhanded comments about how hard Samantha worked by carrying dishes to the sink. No guilt trips about being the cold daughter. Just quiet, just peace, just me. Meanwhile, chaos unfolded back at the old house. My parents had frantically called my grandmother, pleading for sympathy and space. And Grandma, bless her, had said yes, but on one condition: you earn your keep. So off they went to Ohio, where the sauce boils at 5 a.m., the pizza dough doesn't roll itself, and excuses don't bake bread. Samantha called me 3 times that day. I didn't pick up. Her texts were short and pouty. Why are you doing this? Followed by, I thought we were sisters. I almost laughed. Sisters, yes, but not equals, not anymore. I kept moving forward. I unpacked. I set up my workspace. I signed up for a pottery class I'd been eyeing for years. I even bought fresh flowers just for me. No one to question the expense. No one to say it was wasteful. That night, I took a walk through the city. I passed families laughing over dinner, couples strolling hand in hand, and a group of teenagers playing guitar near the fountain. I felt a pang of something, nostalgia, maybe, or grief for the version of me that stayed too long, gave too much, and asked for too little. But I kept walking. One foot in front of the other. Because I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was healing. And for the first time in my adult life, I was living for me. It was a sunny afternoon in Ohio when the delivery truck pulled into the alley behind Grandma's restaurant. Samantha, sweaty from scrubbing ovens, peeked through the back window expecting a produce order. What she got instead was a hard dose of reality, boxes and boxes labeled with her name. Dad's and Mom's, each filled with the belongings I'd packed and shipped from our former home. Taped on top of Samantha's box was a bright yellow envelope. She opened it with flour-dusted fingers, expecting a warm message or maybe a check. Instead, she found a credit card statement. Her card, highlighted in neon pink ink, $185. Across the page, I had written in crisp black marker, "Don't worry. I made sure every charge was traced back to you. Since it's in your name, the bank will expect payment from you. Good luck." Poetic, isn't it? Samantha had once laughed about using my credit card, shrugging off her recklessness like it was a joke. But now, as Grandma barked orders about cheese portions and uniform standards, and the debt collectors began to call her directly, the joke wasn't so funny anymore. Mom wasn't spared either. She opened her own box to find her luxury skincare kits now sealed and labeled "Donate." The gold-embossed dinnerware she insisted was for special guests had already been sold. I had donated the proceeds to the very soup kitchen Mom once mocked for smelling like onions. Oh, and Dad? He found a simple note in his box. No more packed lunches. Try learning to cook or ask Samantha. It was justice, sure, but not out of spite, out of balance. For every time they dismissed my sacrifices, for every moment they mocked my coldness while draining me dry, they now had a mirror held up to their choices. And Grandma, sharp-eyed and silent as ever, knew exactly what I had done. She didn't say a word about the credit card bill or the boxes. She simply nodded once when I visited and handed me a warm slice of pizza with extra mozzarella. "I taught you well," she said quietly. It wasn't revenge. It was a reckoning. And Samantha, Mom, and Dad? They were finally paying the bill they'd been racking up for years. Poetic justice. Served hot. Just like Grandma's pizza. For weeks after the truth unraveled, I kept my distance. I watched from the quiet of my new apartment, breathing in the calm I had fought so hard to earn. No frantic knocks on my bedroom door. No guilt-laced questions about grocery money. No tiptoeing around my sister's tantrums. It was a freedom so unfamiliar. It felt like luxury, but slowly, a strange silence crept in. Not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that makes you think. It was during one of those long evenings, curled up on the couch with a cup of chamomile tea, that my phone lit up. A message from Grandma, Emery. I know your heart is tired, but I wanted you to know, your parents are trying. Samantha too. There's still a long way to go, but they're starting to understand. I stared at those words, my mind circling around them like a cautious cat. Trying? Understanding? Were those even real possibilities? Part of me wanted to dismiss it, but another part, deeper, quieter, wanted to believe. So I called her. And as her warm voice filled the line, telling me how Samantha had started learning real recipes, how Mom had cried the first time she folded clean laundry with care, and how Dad, yes, Dad, had finally apologized for the shoulder massage's excuse, I felt something shift in me. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but a softening. Maybe people really could change. Maybe this time, the lesson stuck. That night, I stood by the window looking out at the city lights. I thought of Samantha chopping vegetables under Grandma's watchful eye, of Mom sweeping the restaurant floor, of Dad handing out pizza slices with a genuine smile. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger at the thought. I felt curiosity. Could we rebuild something real? I didn't know yet, but I was willing to take the next step toward finding out. One small, cautious step at a time. It was a crisp spring morning when I finally stepped off the train and onto the familiar platform of my hometown. The same bricks, the same creaky benches, but somehow, everything felt different. Lighter, stronger. I walked with purpose toward Grandma's restaurant. The smell of baked garlic and fresh basil wafting through the streets like an old friend. Inside, the place buzzed with energy. Laughter from the kitchen, pots clanging, orders being shouted, and there they were. Samantha stood behind the counter, hair tied back, flour dusting her sleeves. She looked up, eyes wide with surprise and something else, respect. Mom wiped her hands on a dish towel, lips parting in disbelief. Dad dropped the pizza paddle mid-spin, but there was no drama this time. No grand speeches. Just a long, quiet moment where we saw each other, truly, for the first time in years. Emery, Grandma called from the back, her voice rich and steady. Grab an apron. I smiled. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. We worked side by side that day, kneading dough, tasting sauce, folding menus. And for the first time, it felt like we were building something real, not out of guilt or debt, but out of growth, of change. That night, after the last customer left, Samantha handed me a simple card. Inside was a note in her handwriting, shaky but heartfelt. Thank you for teaching me what I didn't want to learn. I'm better because of you. I didn't cry. I didn't need to, because in that moment, I realized I had already won. Not just freedom, but peace. Not just justice, but transformation. And not just for me, but for all of us. That was my triumph. And maybe, just maybe, our new beginning.